Hello and welcome to Everyday Linux User. In today's video I'm going to try something new. I'm going to look through some of the viewers' comments. I think I did one of these in the past, but I think I'm going to do one once a month. I try and answer people's comments as I go, but quite often I fall behind because I get quite a lot of comments on a daily basis. So whilst I try and answer them all, I don't always have the time to do it. So I thought what I'd try is on a monthly basis go through some of the comments, and I'll again try and get to you all, but if I don't, it's not because I don't care about the comments, it's because I just haven't had time to get to them. So I'm going to try and round up as many comments as I can through this video. So I'm going to start off with the shorts because I created these for last week and they went out last week, and essentially what I did was I reviewed 5 of the most popular Linux distros for new users, and these are the ones I recommend for new users. I came up with 5 options: Mint, Pop, Manjaro, Ubuntu and Tuxedo. Now obviously people have commented about other distributions out there, but I just picked 5 purely because there's 5 working days in the week. And so I'm going to look at the comments for these videos. So for Linux Mint, John's Linux World said, "Thank you for this series, Gary. Mint is what I'm using." And Mint is obviously one of the most popular distributions and probably the one I recommend to most new users to Linux. And we'll move on to Pop OS. For Pop OS, Tobo Fox 1980 has said Pop is fancy, but of course if you want to challenge yourself and learn a little, then Arch and DWM is the way to go. There's lots of help online to get you out of the gate, and it's quite rewarding being able to get everything set up just the way you like it. Now I'm not against using Arch. It's something that as you progress through your Linux journey, it might be something you want to try. Now if you're a new Linux user or the everyday Linux user, then if you are going to go for Arch, you could try something like Endeavour. Cashi's proven to be more popular as we go along, but Endeavour or Manjaro, I know Manjaro is not always the most popular choice for Arch users, but they're the easiest to get to grips with. Now personally I don't like things like DWM, I don't like Sway, I don't like those sort of tiling window managers. They're not they don't follow my workflow, but that doesn't mean they're not suitable for other people. Fun with Prashant. I started my journey with Ubuntu, and as a user trying to switch for Windows, I regret a bit. Now I think that Cinnamon or KDE or LXQt for old hardware like my case based distros are the best choice for Windows users, in my opinion. Fedora's GNOME is a bit hard to understand and use compared to Ubuntu's GNOME, especially for Windows mindset. My current main OS is Ubuntu, LXQt, but I love using Fedora GNOME, and for scanning documents I love Linux Mint's pre-shipped doc scanner because of its look. I also have Ubuntu and Fedora KDE for showing off. So Prashant, I wonder if he's using lots of virtual machines there, or whether he's genuinely got that many computers. Yeah, I agree with quite a lot of those comments there. KDE, I started liking that more and more as time's progressed. It's become a really good desktop. Cinnamon is great anyway for any user. LXQt is great for old hardware. Now you'll hear me say in my videos LXQT quite a lot, which isn't the correct way of saying it. It's just my 50-year-old head can't get out of the habit of saying LXQT. Fedora's GNOME is a bit harder to understand than Ubuntu's. I'm not sure about that. It's probably harder to install because the Fedora installer isn't great, but once you've got them both installed, and I guess Ubuntu's got snap packages, and Fedora you can get Flatpak working. So once you've got the Flatpaks up and running, I'd say Fedora's is probably the easier to use. Once you've got the package manager sorted, everything else with GNOME virtually works the same. Moving on to Manjaro. Coopertronics said Manjaro is great. I've been using it since 2021. Before that I was using Ubuntu and Mint for many years. And Cal Holly has said I'd rather use Garuda if I was going for Arch. Now I don't have a huge opinion on this either way. Manjaro has always been solid when I've used it. Now I know a lot of Arch users don't like Manjaro because of the way they do their package management, but I've always found it quite solid. As for Garuda, I quite liked it. It was very good with the eye candy, although it gets to you after a while. And then but there's also Endeavour as well if you want an Arch-based distribution. All three of those I'd recommend, and of course there's Cache sitting in the wings as well that a lot of people also swear by. For Ubuntu, our Austrian Poodle has said, nah, use Fedora Knoit and just install Flatpaks, best option for new users. Okay, right, so I tried Fedora Budgie Atomic and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was a really, really good distribution. I've not tried the Knoit one for next year, definitely. And yeah, I really do like the Atomic versions of these Linux operating systems. I think they're solid going forward, and it means you're not going to mess up your system at any point in time. So yeah, I agree to a point with the comment there that Knoit probably is a good choice, but Ubuntu's always been a solid distribution as well. And finally, for the shorts from last week, we have Tuxedo. So Angelo Marius, I'll try and get your names right, but I apologise if I don't. So Angelo Marius has said Linux Mint. Bird with Large Feet has said, what is Tuxedo? Just get something like Mint, Fedora, Ubuntu with a lot of support and big communities. And then Little Dream has said, do I have to know line coding or syntax to use Linux? So let's address this one first. I'll address the Linux Mint one. Yes, Linux Mint is the first choice option, which is why it was number one on the list. It's the one that I would recommend to most new users. But if you try it and you don't like it, then you need other options. Bird with Large Feet, what is Tuxedo? Tuxedo is a computer manufacturer, and they've done a very, very good job of creating a Linux distribution that works out of the box, and they've obviously done it so it can go on their hardware and work with their hardware, and they've done a very, very good job with it. When it comes to support, I think because of its base, it's actually quite well supported anyway, but also it is actually very easy to use, and they've done a solid job with it. And because they're a computer manufacturer, you'd expect them to give a certain amount of support themselves. Having said that, one solid reason for using Ubuntu, of course, is Ubuntu has a huge amount of support out there. Mint and Fedora have been around for ages as well. So yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming with that, but Tuxedo is worth a look. It is actually very, very good. And coming to Little Dream's comment, do I have to know line coding or syntax to use Linux? You can use the distributions I've mentioned here, especially Mint. And I showed this in my recent review of Linux Mint, that you can go most of the way without having to enter in any command line syntax at all. There may be times that if you have issues where you'll go to a forum, or maybe you'll use ChatGPT or something like that, and it will tell you to enter commands into the command line. Now, it might be worth understanding some commands, because there are some not so nice people out there that will tell you to enter commands that will destroy your system, and they think they're being funny. Some of them, they're not. I just don't think it's a funny comment telling you to remove all your files on your system, or trying to fork bomb to crash your system, but people do that sort of thing. So if you can understand the commands, great, but you can get away without not knowing them and just using the GUI for most things. Now, I do have videos on my channel that cover the command line, so you might want to go and look for those, but as I said, by and large you can get away without using any command line tools at all, as I showed in my month on Linux Mint. So I've exhausted all the shorts from this month, so let's look at the latest videos. So I released this one today, review of 2024. There are no comments on that yet, I don't believe. So let's move on to this 5 reasons not to use OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Now, I've been getting quite a lot of reaction to this one, not all of it positive. So essentially in this video I came up with 5 reasons not to use OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Now, one of them is actually from the OpenSUSE website itself, which says that normal users, new users, the everyday Linux user should be using OpenSUSE Leap. And the difference between the two is Tumbleweed is rolling release, and OpenSUSE Leap is like Ubuntu and Linux Mint. It releases every 6 months or so, and you just upgrade in the normal fashion. And the reason for not using something like Tumbleweed is the way you have to update your system regularly, and there are times when things can sort of break. Now I've got some flack from this, and I'll read out all the comments and I'll try and answer as best as possible. So one of the comments is there is a live version of Tumbleweed to try out, because one of the comments I put was there isn't a live version of Tumbleweed. So what I'm going to do is go to the OpenSUSE website. Now the obvious thing to do is click on Tumbleweed and probably install Tumbleweed, and then click on the download. Now you can see there's quite a lot of stuff going on here. So the first thing I did was look at the types of machine. So this is the 64-bit one. So you've got an offline image and the network image. So instantly your eyes aren't drawn to the fact that there's a live image available. If you scroll down here, we also have minimal virtual machines, live images, and check out alternative downloads. So yes, I was wrong on that. There are live images, but you have to go down to this alternative downloads. So if we go here, there are live CDs available here. I assume these are all Tumbleweed, but yeah, you can get a live version of OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Maybe this leads on to my previous topic, which was about websites and how good they are, but it wasn't immediate to the eye that there's this live version available. I'm not sure, somebody may be able to comment and say, can you actually install from these live CDs, or is it just a live CD that you've got there? Future Eyes Only said, I like Linux Mint 22 myself, it just works. I agree with that. James McCloskey, Zorin OS is the best for new users or anyone that wants great design and stability. Again, you can't really argue. Zorin's been around a long time. Some people like it, some people don't. I did quite like the replies on this. It did get a little bit interesting. So Paxalotin said, the best for new users, eh? So perhaps you can explain why Linux Mint is by far the most popular for new users. And James McCloskey's come back with a very creditable Windows 10 11 is even more popular than Linux Mint. Does that mean it is better by default? And it reminds me of the music from the sort of like 1990s, where you had all those boy bands, and you had all these other great bands around at the time, and people used to sort of think that, oh, Boyzone and Westlife, they must be the best bands in the world because they're always number one. And it's like, whose music do you still listen to 30 years on? Is it Boyzone and Westlife, or is it like Oasis and Blur and bands like that? I'm obviously from the UK. In America, you've probably got other large bands that you listen to, but you know, the best band isn't the one that is always number one in the charts. Quite often, 20-30 years on, it's a band that didn't hit the top of the charts all the time, although Oasis and Blur did get there. And in the same as this case, Linux Mint top of the charts, but doesn't mean it's everyone's cup of tea and therefore everyone's going to like it. So James' point about Zorin is good. I can't argue with Paxalotin's point about Linux Mint as well, because that's also very good. But it's just quite a nice, interesting little conversation there, and the lull here sums it up, I think. And under PR, I have been daily driving for work purposes for a couple of years. It is very solid. I'm not even going to try that one, sorry. Haven't spent months using Tumbleweed KDE. This just makes me laugh a lot. Yes, okay. Maybe a comment as to why this makes you laugh. T Loom has said, I switched my dev laptop from Debian i3WM desktop to OpenSUSE Slow Roll with Sway and IceWM desktops and BTRFS with Snapper enabled, so when updating through terminal, Snapper takes snapshot. If update goes wrong, just boot last snapshot, wait a week, then try again. I live in the terminal. I will answer all of these later on, but actually for this one, okay, it sounds like you're quite a serious user, not the everyday Linux user or new user to Linux. Most people aren't going to be using window managers like that. Most computer users want something really clickable, you know, point and click, and it works. The fact that you have to have these things about with Snapper, waiting a week, try again in the terminal, just boot the last snapshot, and all that sort of stuff feels probably overcomplicated for the average user. The average user just wants to turn the computer on and it works. O1 Sin has said, sorry, but this video is rubbish and nonsense about OpenSUSE. There's nothing like constructive criticism, and that's nothing like constructive criticism. If you've got a point, state your point. Like if you don't like the video because A, B, and C, say this is wrong because of A, B, and C. Like the guy at the top said, actually there is a live version of Tumbleweed, and I've answered that and said, actually you're right, there is a live version of Tumbleweed. Those sort of comments aren't really helpful for me or anyone. If something's rubbish, you need to say why it's rubbish. I'm not sure what this one is. And then Mike Stewart said this guy is way in left field. Terrible review for the new user, which is quite the opposite of his goal here. Mike, as with this one here, explain why you think it's a terrible review, and then others can judge whether you're right or whether I'm right, or what's probably right is something down the middle on it. But the OpenSUSE Tumbleweed website does actually state that it's not for new users. So for me to say it's not for new users, I don't think is completely left field. I think, I'm just saying what OpenSUSE are saying themselves. So that's the 5 reasons not to use Tumbleweed. Mixed reviews on that one. Rating the top 10 Linux websites. So in this video, I looked at the top 10 Linux distributions in DistroWatch right now, and I rated their websites based on how easy it is to navigate them, how easy it is to download the distribution, how much information there is, things like that. 15 comments on this one. So Tommy Burton said, been using Linux Mint Gloria. It's an excellent distro, but I encourage everyone to experiment with different distros. Linux is a garden, and I really like the next comment along. Existential Baby said, a beautiful open garden, and I think that's my favourite comment of the month. Jim W said MX is no longer number 1 on DistroWatch, it's now Mint. Yeah, okay. At the time of creating the video it was number 1, but regardless, I've covered both of them anyway. James McCloskey, Zorin OS easily has the best website by far, both from a style and a functionality point of view. Don Nadi has said Big Linux. I'm not sure what is meant by that. And then James has commented again, Zorin OS with a question mark. Now, the reason I didn't do Zorin OS is it's not, or wasn't in the top 10 at the time of creating the video. If you like this video, which is proven quite popular, so I might make another one with the next 10 websites, and then Zorin would be in that list there. And there was a statement here that said there should be a collected list of rankings, and then somebody said there is, but it gets a bit bitey, so I'm not going to read those out. In the complete GNOME customization guide, I showed you how to do different things with GNOME, how to set it up. So there's only 2 comments for this one. One's mine, and the question is GNOME better than Mint Cinnamon? It's personal choice, really. I would say that more of the add-ons and extras work with Cinnamon than GNOME. I found with GNOME you spend a lot of time installing the extensions, and then they're not necessarily working anymore. They worked at the time but don't work with the latest version that you're using. So yeah, on that basis Mint's probably easier to get set up, but you can get them both to a the way you like it, and they've all got the same sort of functions and stuff that you'll need. Cinnamon's probably a bit more customizable than GNOME, but it's not much in it. You've seen, if you watch this video, that it's quite easy to customize GNOME to a good extent, and it's still different theming. Then 3 weeks ago had my 20-year Linux journey, and in this video I basically cover my entire Linux journey from over 20 years and how I got to where I am today, and the journey I've taken with Linux. 16 comments on this one. I like this one by Brian. Actually, this could be my favourite comment of the video as well. Actually, I really like this one. My Linux beginning goes back to Slackware. I started in late 1995, but the first image I obtained was older than that because I got it from a book. Needless to say, as I learned, one of the first things I did was get newer video drivers. That improved my access from 8 to 256 colours at that time, and from 640 by 400 video resolution all the way up to 1024 by 768, which was all my 1995 computer could handle. how far we've all come since then. John Bowles said, what a wonderful insight into your Linux history. Long may you continue with your journey and may you garner many more subscribers. Thank you for that, John. T-Scorch said, interesting journey. I started using Linux around 1999, Red Hat primarily, but I also used Mandrake, SUSE and others for a while. I eventually switched to Ubuntu. When they switched to Unity, I experimented around with other desktops, including Enlightenment, which I had used earlier. Eventually, Unity was good enough and it became productive for me. When they switched to GNOME 3, I played around and ended up on KDE, currently in Manjaro. I'm interested in opinions on which distribution KDE users prefer. I will probably try Cosmic after it hits 1.0, or probably a little later. A really good comment there, that one, and quite a good long journey you've had as well. And I think we followed similar journeys, starting Mandrake and SUSE and then Ubuntu, and I'm still jumping around 20 years later, mainly because I make videos about Linux, not because I can't choose one of them. Retrospace has said, awesome 20 years. Wow, I was introduced to Linux in 2008 via the Asus EE PC that had Xandros on it. I'm still using Linux today. Greetings from Cape Town. Greetings from Scotland, Retrospace. Dennis says, thank you for sharing. About 20 years ago I was given an old green Siemens laptop with a broken battery and Windows XP. Nothing much ran on it, not even flash games. The whole point of it was to make me think computers are slow and boring, until a certain someone installed Linux Mint on it. Stuff like card games and super tax ran like butter, still using Mint today. See, I really like all these sort of like Linux journey stories, so if you've got them, post them to me and I'll read them out, and maybe we can build up all our sort of like Linux journeys together. I mean, I find all this sort of stuff fascinating. And then we've got Loyal Cav 1575 recently installed Linux Mint on an old laptop my brother used to have. I can say that I really liked it from what I tried. Main reason for interest with Linux was simply not wanting my C drive bloated like it did with my gaming laptop because of Windows updates. I was thinking Arch at first because of Valve donating money to it, even though I knew it was known as a Linux user distro, not a beginner one. It was simply your Linux Mint is boring short that actually made me commit to give Mint a shot. That's great that one of my videos has encouraged you to try Linux Mint out, and I hope you enjoy your journey on it. Obviously that Linux Mint is boring was a tongue-in-cheek short, because somebody had said that Linux Mint is boring. Obviously Linux Mint isn't boring, it works and does its job, and I think it's great. Linux Dev Lab said, that's some journey. I think most Arch derivatives are legit, but I disagree with you about Manjaro. It's great when everything works, but it always gave me grief. Yeah, a lot of Arch users aren't that keen on Manjaro. Personally, I think it's good, but a lot of other people don't. And then Future Eyes Only said, I started out with Puppy Linux in 2006, played with Knoppix a bit for a few years, landed on Linux Mint a few years ago, and never looked back. Today, I refuse to use Windows. I don't refuse to use Windows, and I use it in my day job. I don't have a choice. I'm a .NET developer, and I work for a company that specialises in sort of like Windows-based software and web software. So I'm kind of stuck using Windows at work, but at home, 100% Linux, unless I'm doing a video showing you how to install a distribution from Windows to Linux. We'll do a couple more. How to theme Linux USB boot menu. Just one comment there, a couple of hearts. How to create a bootable persistent Linux USB drive. Thank you for this. I needed something for a customer to be able to flash a LibRem5 phone, and it was going to be an old laptop, but now I'm going to see if a flash drive with MX Linux with persistence will work. You're welcome, Dick. Thank you. We'll go as far as month on Linux Mint, I think. So for my dual boot guide for OpenSUSE and Windows, Guy1256 said, thanks for this. And then Ish the Pro said, hi, what do I do if the guided setup was not able to propose a layout using the provided settings? And my available drives are Windows, Windows and Windows. Now what I've actually commented back, and maybe this is where the community can help with this, I think probably it's not found an area of space to put OpenSUSE, and you'll need to create an area of partition, either a partition or a drive, or give it somewhere where it can actually install OpenSUSE. I don't think it can find a drive to put OpenSUSE onto. So maybe go over the video again and look at the partition and make sure you've got a blank partition, or if anyone else has got any suggestions out there, it would be great. But I think that's what I would try in the first instance. Finally, we will finish on a month on Linux. And on the month on Linux, I basically reviewed Linux Mint that I'd been using for the previous month, which was November. And future riders only. Again, I said I love Linux Mint, been using it for a few months and love it. Thank you for that. Darth Geek has said I switched over about 2 months ago. It's working for about 99% of everything I need. Some apps don't play nice, but they're mainly Windows apps running in Wine, and it's more of a Wine issue than anything else. I also don't like how it handles the 2 extra internal drives I have. Getting them working is easy enough, but automating is a pain. Greyfall has said I started to use Mint on my main desktop about 3 months ago. I can't say it has been faultless, as I had to faff around to get my Canon inkjet working on Wi-Fi, and had to revert to an old Bluetooth USB dongle to get that to be stable too. I had to find out about XRAN too. I couldn't get a full range colour palette on my monitor with an Intel APU, so I had to force it at startup using XRAN and creating a startup program to automate it. Other than learning about Wine and bottles to run a couple of Windows programs, I much prefer to the Linux alternatives. It's been pretty straightforward. It hiccups now and again, but then so does Windows. I like it. I really don't like where Microsoft is going, so Mint will do for me. Interesting points about the problems you've been having there. Anyone else having problems with Linux Mint? When it comes to printers are the bane of society. Have they ever worked? Can anyone honestly say that printers have ever been easy to set up? I mean, I've got a HP inkjet printer and I've had it a while, and whilst I get it set up all right, what is this thing that you know, when you want to print the blimmin' thing, doesn't matter whether you're using your phone, whether you're using your computer, whatever it is, it'll say can't find it, can't find that printer, sorry, I'm not here. Have you got any magenta? I'm printing in black and white. No, I want magenta. Printers have always been awful. They don't work. Printer manufacturers need to work on this because it's been like this since the 1990s. Anyone who's seen the film Office Space will appreciate printers and how bad they actually are. Not discounting your problem with the Canon inkjet there and it being a Linux Mint problem, but printers in general are bad. Bluetooth USB dongle, maybe list your hardware and see why you're having problems with the with your monitor and with your Bluetooth and stuff like that. Maybe other people here can help. Wine is always a bit hit and miss. Some programs work, some don't. But I'll leave it there, see if anyone else can help with that. John Bowles said thanks for another great video. I'm hoping my 15-year-old laptop will be able to run Mint. If not, I'll watch more of your videos and try different OSs. So if Mint Cinnamon doesn't work, you can try the one I said for an older computer, which is Mint XFCE. If that doesn't work, you can try Linux Lite, or you can try Q4 OS is always a good one. NTX Linux is a good one. MX Linux is a good one. There are lots of distributions for old computers out there. Balsam Alberto 8086 I said I've been running it for almost a year, but recently ran into issues with random freezing, which I isolated down to the kernel update causing this issue. It's 100% AMD, so I guess due to my ancient hardware was a problem. I had to roll back to 6.8.00.44. There's absolutely not a scenario on Linux where you will not have to use a command line and manually editing config files and look up a bunch of guides to figure out what you are doing. That's just how it is on Linux. I used ChatGPT for the first time and it was somewhat help. It's good at explaining what a command or config setting does without having to do cryptographic analysis on what the official manual is trying to say. AI is great. I prefer to use Gemini over ChatGPT nowadays, but it doesn't always give you the right answer. As long as you're aware that it doesn't always give you the right answer. If you kind of know what you're doing in the first place and type a question into the AI, then quite often it will come up with a guide. Even if it doesn't give you the right answer, it'll give you enough of an answer that it'll get you to where you need to be. And sometimes you have to keep tweaking the question to get where you want to go. But yes, I do recommend using AI to help with Linux things, but be careful because it doesn't always give you the right answer. Lion Raw says they need to fix Grub, time to modernise. Not sure what is meant by that. And this comment here says they better be after feasting on thousands upon thousands of donations each month. Cal Holly has said why it works great. You see it for 2 seconds, then you pass it. Not everything needs to be fluffed. And Lion Raw has said, except I added a hard drive to my PC and Grub would no longer boot into Linux. Tell me that it doesn't have issues. Windows, by the way, didn't care. I've always found Grub to work quite well on Linux Mint. I do hear stories where somebody runs a Windows update and then it gets rid of the Grub, and then you have to either reinstall Grub. But quite often, it's just a case of going into your BIOS and then selecting the correct option again, because Windows is just taking that option. But it's still there. You can just go into your BIOS and select the one where the Grub is and make it number one choice again. The awesome Teg said change your wallpaper. So when I start a review, I will start with the default wallpaper and then change it later on. You know, you've got the Linux Mint wallpaper. I'm trying to do a review on Linux Mint. It makes sense to just show that it's Linux Mint at the start. And then Cal Holly said, I disagree, my TV has an overscan problem and my resolution isn't detected, and it's even hard to get it configured on Windows, though I did finally figure it out. In Mint you have to program Xrandr to get it to work and create a config file and play in the terminal, etc. In Nabara KDE there's an overscan slider built into the display settings page. It's just better, and I'm not sure why people still tell noobs to use Mint over Nabara. It's better in so many ways, better for gaming too, easy to modify. Stop sending people to Mint. There are several other distros that are far superior. Mint works fine as long as everything is working. The true measure of distros is how you can pull through when things don't work correctly. Like for example, my scroll speed was way too fast in Garuda KDE and it had the same resolution overscan problem. I spent days trying to fix it and it's just not out there. Apparently Garuda is really only made for 1080p or better resolution, or you're going to have issues. But Nabara had built-in solutions for all these problems, which was refreshing to see, and has a great distro for about a month now. I might try some others, but this thing just works. Okay, so Linux Mint probably works well for the majority of users out there, and a large majority of users, and there are going to be cases where it's not for you. One, you don't like it. Two, it doesn't work for your hardware, and there are other options available. So out of all the ones I've tried, and I've tried out of the top 100, I've probably tried 70% of them. I've always found Linux Mint to be the easiest to set up, easiest to use, and it's worked most on my hardware. And I've listed the other ones that I like as well. And then I've also done reviews on other distributions along the way, and if they're good, I'll say they're good. If they're not, then I'll say what the problems are. I point them to Mint because in my personal experience Mint has always been solid. I accept that that's not going to be the case for all people. I will always recommend Mint as a first choice, but that doesn't stop me also saying other distributions are great as well. So that's I think that's what my standpoint is that Linux Mint is the one that I recommend to new users, but I will recommend these ones as well if you don't like Mint, which is why last week I did the 5 videos, or the 5 that I'd recommend. If I had to do 20, I could come up with 20, and maybe that's a video for the new year. I think I've gone on long enough. I think this is probably going to be a long video. Most of you have probably left by now, but that's it. That's the last video of the year. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. I wish you all a happy New Year's Eve when it comes, and a happy New Year into 2025. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave comments if you've got further things to add to this video, and thank you for watching.